Imagine, if you will, that the Church of Galatia existed not in the 1st century, but in the 21st century, and that the Apostle Paul wrote his letter to that church today. How do you think they would have responded to his letter? Hello, I'm Jerry Johnson, and I welcome you to this edition of Against the World. If the church at Galatia had been a modern, exciting, user-friendly, touchy-feel-good emergent church, then what follows may have been their response to the Apostle Paul's letter. Dear Paul, we, the elders of the church in Galatia, are in possession of the letter you sent. The committee has directed me to inform you of a number of things which deeply trouble the saints with respect to that letter. First, we find your language to be somewhat intemperate. In your letter, after a very brief greeting, you immediately launch into an attack against the Judaizers, who, by the way, are really nice people. You even go so far as to claim to know their hearts when you state that they want to pervert the gospel of Jesus Christ. You then say that such men should be regarded as accursed, and in another place, you call them false brethren. Paul, we believe you need to be more charitable and give these men the benefit of the doubt. To make the situation worse, if that were possible, you later say, I wish that those who trouble you would even cut themselves off. Is such a statement really fitting for a Christian minister? This remark, in our opinion, seems quite harsh and unloving. With that said, we really feel the need to caution you about the tone of all of your epistles. You come across in an abrasive manner to many people. In some of your letters, you've even mentioned names, and this practice has no doubt upset the friends of Hymenaeus, Alexander, and others. Paul, many members of our congregation came to Christ under the ministries of these men that you mention. And calling them out by name can only stir up bad feelings when you speak of them in a derogatory manner. In other words, Paul, I believe you should strive for a more moderate posture in your ministry. Shouldn't you try to win those who are in error by displaying a kinder, gentler spirit? By now, you've probably alienated the Judaizers and others to the point that they will no longer listen to you. By your outspokenness, you have also diminished your opportunities for future influence throughout the church as a whole. Rather, if you had worked more cooperatively, you might have been asked to serve on a committee appointed to study the issues the Judaizers brought up. You could then have contributed your insights by helping to draft a good committee paper on the theological position without having to drag personalities into the dispute. But as we've come to expect, it's just like you to surrender unity in the name of doctrinal purity. We are sure that you will agree that in the days ahead, which are very dark, we need every friend and ally we can get. We cannot afford to allow differences over doctrinal minutiae to obscure our goal for our church's growth and influence. To judge these men on their theological convictions alone is just inappropriate. Paul, we need to maintain unity among those who profess a belief in Christ. The Judaizers at least stand with us on confronting the surrounding paganism and humanism which prevails within the culture. Surely you can see that these Judaizers are our allies in the moral struggles of our day. Things like abortion, homosexuality, and government tyranny. We simply cannot allow differences over doctrinal minutiae to obscure our common ground. Our elders met, discussed, and prayed, and we agonized over this, Paul, and God gave us a peace confirming we are doing the right thing. I was also asked to mention that many questions have been raised about the content of your epistle as well as the style. The elders at our church question the propriety of the doctrinaire structure of your epistles. Is it wise to plague young Christians, like some of those in our congregation, with such heavy theological issues? For example, in a couple of places, you allude to the doctrine of election. You also enter into a lengthy discussion of the law of God. Perhaps you could have proved your case in some other ways without mentioning these complex and controverted points of Christianity. Your letter is so doctrinaire, it will probably serve only to polarize the differing factions within the churches. Again, we need to stress unity instead of broaching issues which will accent divisions among us. In one place you wrote, "Indeed I, Paul, say to you that if you become circumcised, Christ will profit you nothing." Paul, you have a terrible tendency to describe things strictly in terms of black and white, as if there's no gray area. You need to temper your expressions, lest you become too exclusive. Otherwise, your outlook will drive away many people and make visitors feel unwelcome. Church growth is not promoted by taking such a hardline stand and remaining inflexible. Paul, we admit that we are not the perfect church. We have to tolerate doctrinal differences for the sake of relevancy. Many folks coming from the culture, be they Jewish or Roman, need their traditions to make them feel comfortable. If certain men want to stress circumcision, so be it. After all, they hold to the Trinity, the deity of Christ, baptism, the Lord's Supper, and most other doctrines just like us. As already noted, we are sure by now that you have hurt the feeling of these men, these Judaizers, and have probably ruined any chance of ministering to them. We will try to do damage control on our end, and we recommend that you write a second letter praising these Judaizers for all the good that they are doing. Hopefully, this will help to calm things down. Sincerely, Dr. Feelgood, Head Elder, Church at Galatia. Until next week, this is Jerry Johnson standing contra mundum against the world.